We can begin.
Swamiji.
Yeah.
Hello everyone. Welcome to the discussion on Yoga Sutras. This meeting will be recorded and it will be posted on YouTube. If you have missed any of the previous discussions on introductions to the Upanishads or the Vedas, please feel free to go to YouTube. You can find it over there. Also, please mute yourself when Swamiji is talking, and you can unmute yourself whenever you have questions. Please feel free to ask questions. I'll hand it over to Swamiji.
This meeting is being recorded.
So, at the beginning, I will chant one verse of invocation, which is a tribute to the three great sages associated with yoga tradition. Stuve Patanjalim Vyasam Shankaram Chamunitrayam Kartra Sutrasya Bhashyasya Karma Vivaranasya Cha. This is the Sanskrit verse. I should try to explain in English. So my obeisance, my respects to these three great sages. Munitrayam is the word used in Sanskrit, which means these three great saints or sages who are associated with yoga tradition. There are many scholars and saints and sages who are associated with yoga tradition, who come as a succession of teachers and students of yoga tradition. But there are these three sages, that is Patanjali, Vyasa and Shankaracharya. So Patanjali is the author of Yoga Sutras. So Katra Sutrasya Bhashyasya Kramat Vivaranasya Cha. Patanjali is the author of Yoga Sutras. There are altogether 195 Yoga Sutras. Sutras, the word sutra in Sanskrit means a thread. It also, technically in the Vedantic hermeneutics in general, it means a pithy statement. It need not necessarily be just a sentence. It could be a sentence sometimes, it could be a phrase, it could be a word, it could be even some letters. So, sutra is a very interesting expression. I think no other religious or philosophical tradition has got this unique mechanism of expressing a lot of great ideas in just a few words or one word or a few letters. To give an example, towards the end of Panini's Vyakarana Sutras, is a sutra. Now you may go crazy if you don't understand the meaning behind. Patanjali himself has written Mahabhashya, a huge, several volumes, it comes in several volumes, metrical verses. On this particular sutra, what it implies, in Sanskrit grammar. Of course, I am not going into that subject, it's an entirely different area. So, Panini is the author of these Vyakarana Sutras, and Patanjali also wrote a huge monumental work, a number of volumes together on Sanskrit grammar. So, we'll deal with that later. So, the first name yoga tradition is Patanjali. So, in other words, those of you who stand on your head or do different physical postures, you don't know perhaps that you are actually practicing a kind of physical exercise which Patanjali mentioned only in one single statement. Patanjali made 195 statements. It's called Sutra. Sthira Sukham Asanam. That is the only sutra which has relevance to Hatha yoga, with yoga, whatever you learn in yoga studios. For Patanjali, asana means a series of physical exercises which helps you to sit for a long time with a perfectly relaxed mood, continuously for a long time, keeping your spinal cord, your neck and your head on a straight line. So that you can meditate properly. So that's about Patanjali's Sutras. So those of you who are interested, you can ask more questions. I'll be happy to answer during the interaction. So Patanjali is the first name, the author of the 195 Sutras, divided into 4 chapters. In the printed book, you will find Samadhipada, Sadhanapada, Vibhudipada, Kaivalyapada. Samadhi means concentration. Sadhana means practices. Vibhudi means the powers, the results, the consequences, the physical and psychological and spiritual benefits that you derive by practicing this yoga. Yoga here means a series of spiritual and psychological practices. That's give by way of definition to yoga as such. The second chapter is called Sadhanapada, is practices. First concentration, chapter 1 concentration, second chapter practices. The third chapter is Vibhudi. Vibhudi means consequences, the results. And the fourth chapter is Kaivalya, means emancipation, liberation and so on. So Samadhipada, Sadhanapada, Vibhudipada, Kaivalyapada. The chapter on concentration, the chapter on practices, the powers or the benefits derived by practicing yoga, and the last one, the chapter on spiritual liberation. Now, if you look at these, the names of these chapters, you will be puzzled. The first one deals with samadhi, concentration. The second one deals with practices. The third one, the results or consequences. And the fourth one, liberation. The order in actual spiritual practice will be slightly different, because in ancient Indian Gurukulas, students used to memorize these 195 sutras according to the way of traditional schools. They used to slightly change the order of the chapters. That means first you practice, then the results, and then the concentration, and then the liberation. Always the last one is liberation. So in actual spiritual practice, Sadhanapada comes first, the chapter on practices. The results, Vibhudipada second. The concentration, which is the result of these practices, Samadhipada, and liberation. In the Gurukula system, we were first taught Sadhanapada, practices, then Vibhudipada, then Samadhipada, then Kaivalyapada, which the order I am going to practice here. But there is one difference. Samadhipada, the first 14 sutras, contain a very elaborate introduction to the spiritual psychology of yoga, which actually unravels the entirely different concept of human mind. Why we are not able to do what, and why we end up doing what we don't want to do. In life. See, if you always could do what you wanted to do, there will be no problem in the world. If you can avoid doing what you don't want to do, there will be no problem. The problem always arises because you end up doing what you don't want to do, and you end up not doing what you want to do. So actually this problem is resolved in only one known system of branch of knowledge or learning, That is only in Patanjali's system. He gives a very wonderful exposition. He human mind, which though I'm not a, but I did have the opportunity to study psychology as part of my academic curriculum, and that brief introduction to Western psychology. So my understanding is Western psychology stops a long distance away from where Patanjali begins. Patanjali only begins where modern psychology stops. See, modern psychology can give a medicine which can only postpone the problem by benumbing the mental system. So psychiatry can only postpone the problem. The problem will return with greater force. But Patanjali really explains how we can start a new life right now, today, if you really want and if you are ready to take the burden. So, first one is this sadhanapada, then vibhudipada, then samadhipada, and then kaivalyapada. Now, the second name in among the teachers of Patanjali system is Vyasa. Actually, today we are able to talk about Patanjali yoga system. Today we are able to discuss Patanjali, especially yoga system, only because a great man called Vyasa wrote a very elaborate commentary on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Because Yoga Sutras themselves are not self-explanatory. They give only hints. So maybe several centuries later, after maybe Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are placed sometime in the middle of the second millennium, according to some historians, sometime they place around 9th century BC, they bring it forward to modern times, 9th century BC. But anyway, Vyasa appeared several centuries later. He must have been one of the teachers in the long lineage of teachers of yoga tradition. So he wrote a bhashya. So sutra means, alpaksharam asandigdam saravat vishwatu mukham astobham anavadyam cha sutram sutravido viduhu. This is the traditional interpretation of what the sutra means. It should contain a lot of meaning, loaded with meaning. It should be very brief, and it should, once you understand the meaning, it should certainly leave no doubt, and it should be capable of expanded interpretation, leaving no doubt in your mind once you understand it. Bhashya means an exposition of a system of philosophy, the essence of sutra literature. That is Bhashya means. So, now after Vyasa, the well-known, the famous Advaita philosopher Shankaracharya, in 8th century he wrote a sub-commentary on Vyasa's commentary on Patanjali Sutras. It is called Vivarana. So it's called Vyasa Bhashya Vivarana. Vivarana is the name of the book he wrote. Now, why I am making these statements? You see, when you study Yoga Sutra, if you really want to get a feeling, when you get to know of these great spiritual names, great preceptors and teachers behind the yoga tradition, and when you read Yoga Sutras, or when you go visit the yoga studio next door to you, you feel you are actually joining distinguished company. Really. That is one advantage, because you are actually becoming part of an ancient spiritual tradition which has produced such great saints going back several millennia before Christ. That's the uniqueness of it. Now, this much about by way of introduction. Stuve Patanjalim Vyasam Shankaram cha Munitriyam Kartru Sutrasya Bhashyasya Krama Vivaranasya. This is the invocation. Now, I must say a few more things about Patanjali, the order. Patanjali is a well-known figure not only in yoga tradition but also, as I mentioned earlier, in this tradition of Sanskrit grammar, is the author of the most authentic exposition of Sanskrit grammar. It runs into several volumes in metrical form, and it is an exposition of the original, again, sutra literature of Panini. And then Patanjali made another great contribution. That is, he is also a great name in Indian school of medicine. He wrote a well-known book on Charaka Samhita. These two names are well-known in Ayurveda, Charaka and Sushruta. They also wrote in the sutra literature. So Patanjali wrote a well-known famous book on Ayurveda. It is an exposition of Charaka Sutras, it's called. Now I shall just begin the first sutra, which normally discussed in a traditional school of yoga. That is the first sutra of Samadhipada, because Samadhipada comes in all published textbooks and manuscripts. And the tradition of beginning with Sadhanapada, Vibhudipada, Samadhi, and then Kaivalya, that's not the way in which it may be taught in some of the universities where you may have studied, or some of the yoga studios where you may have studied. But that is only from the perspective of spiritual practices. But the first 14 sutras of Samadhipada are very important because they give you some kind of a formal introduction to Patanjala system. The first sutra is, Atha Yoga Anushasana. So, Atha Yoga Anushasana. Only 3 words. Yoga Anushasanam is a combination of 2 words. Yoga Anushasanam. Atha means now onwards, henceforth, right now, let us now begin. Why now? Why henceforward? That's because you turn to yoga only when you get exhausted knocking at so many other wrong doors. You knock at the wrong door, it doesn't open, finally you come to yoga. Because Atha means a lot of things in yoga, in the sutra tradition. First, after getting the necessary qualification, you enter a new class. That's one meaning. Another meaning is, in the context of yoga, you cannot really study Yoga Sutra, or you cannot really study any spiritual literature unless you have come to a conclusion that this is something worth experimenting with. So people looking for happiness and contentment, looking for answers to the questions, frequently their mind poses, the mind will be asking. Finally, they turn to yoga. You're looking for answers. So some of the questions, some of the challenges, dilemmas they have to face in life. So that's the real meaning of Atha. I mean, we turn to spiritual life only at some point when we come to realize that spiritual life or meditative life or some kind of introspection is the only remedy to some of the problems we are facing in life. That's one meaning of Atha. One great interpretation that comes from Vyasa is that is a very, very important thing. Vyasa, by way of explaining this sutra, he gives a graphic picture of human mind when we turn to yoga. So, if you look at the world of human mind, you can find 2 categories. One, the person who experiences and the experience. We called bhoga experiences and the person who experiences things. Experiences could be manifold. It could be in the form of extreme liking for certain things, extreme dislike for certain things, and a kind of indifference. So, avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, klesha. There you find one sutra comes in the sadhana pada, which we'll discuss later. So, extreme dislike for certain things. We know there is no reason to dislike it, but we cannot get out of it. And extreme infatuation to certain things. We know it is totally irrational. It becomes a burden, but we cannot get out of it. Now, modern psychology or psychiatry may call it obsession, obsessive psychosis, psychotic problems could be, or it could be some kind of delusions. Whatever it is, human mind is always, human emotions are always colored by either extreme liking certain things, extreme dislike for certain things. Now, Vyasa says a normal human mind is not able to remain steady on a great ideal all the time. So he uses the word vikshipta. Vikshipta mana. Vikshipta means wavering, like a pendulum of a clock. A pendulum moves from one end to the other end. It doesn't remain steady and stable in the middle of the clock. So mind is a mind is stream consciousness. A stream of consciousness, William James himself, modern psychologist, defines it as an endless stream flow of thought currents. If you analyze these thought currents, you find we can divide them broadly into two categories: raga and dvesha in Sanskrit, extreme infatuation to certain things, and extreme hatred of certain things, liking and dislike. So that's why sometimes when we go to a church or a temple or a holy place, any place for the matter, if you go to library and read a great book, or if you have got a book right on your table, and you may have some other undesirable publications also on your table, you want to read that wonderful book, but you have a strong desire to read it, but you are not able to read it. So you find a kind of internal conflict between what we want to do and what our mind permits us to do. Spiritual practice or yoga practice enables us to do what we really want to do or what we ought to do, what would be the best thing for us to do for our own benefit. So this state of mind is called vikshipta mana according to Vyasa. Please remember, this is not from Patanjali. These ideas were supplied by Vyasa by way of interpreting Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So this is called vikshipta mana. Now, there are two mental states behind and two mental states before. So let us say, I shall try to explain. Before you reach this state of wavering mind, there are two other states of human mind which are slightly abnormal. We call it, kshiptam and mudam. These are two terms used by Vyasa. Kshipta means restless but inactive. Sometimes active, sometimes inactive. Mudam means full of confusion but totally what we call tamasic, full of inertia, not able to do anything. These are two states which Vyasa refers to, which we are not going to discuss because they are abnormal states of human mind. But the normal states of human mind, majority of people, not only spiritual seekers, but the majority of people, they are excited when something goes on well. So when you attend a prayer, or when you read a great book, or when you are talking with somebody whom you respect, whose association you value very much, you are very happy. Or when you are participating in some kind of prayer meeting, any ceremony, religious ceremony, spiritual ceremony, anything, you are very happy. But then after some time, you go back to your home and you feel you become a bit unhappy. So when you go back to your home, you become unhappy. When you are in the church, you are very happy. So mind again is called vikshipta. So that's the normal state of human mind. A person who is turning to yoga normally belongs to this category. Atha yoga anushasanam. So you get a glimpse of something that you should do. You can find this among many people. Certain people come to Vedanta society, and I'm sure this happens in all other respectable religious, spiritual traditions as well. When people visit either churches, synagogues, Buddhist temples, or wherever the followers of those respective traditions, they feel great joy. And after some time, that joy is no more there. When they come back again tomorrow, they feel a great joy. So you can find mind moving from one end of the clock to the other end, like a pendulum. That is vikshipta mana. So this is the normal state of human mind. Of course, there are two other states which we will discuss in the coming chapters. That is called ekagram and niruddham. Ekagra state means a state of concentration, which is the result of a lot of spiritual practices according to yoga tradition. And niruddha state, which is the ultimate stage of spiritual practices, which we are going to discuss later. So the first sutra is Atha Yoga Anushasana. So according to Vyasa, you need to be fit for understanding yoga. See, people who have reached some degree of cultural evolution, spiritual evolution, those have imbibed a lot of noble values. Only such people will find interesting when you attend a yoga sutra class. Otherwise, there are many wonderful entertainments that actually keep your mind busy. But discussing these things and enjoying these ideas are not easy. That's why he says, Atha means adhigara, fitness. Fitness means the ability to enjoy spiritual practices. So, of course, Bhoja, another commentator, says, Ya Shastram Anushishyade Anena Idi, etc. I am not going to those Sanskrit definitions right now. Now, the next sutra is Yogaha Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So this is a definition of what yoga is. The purpose of yoga is nothing. Yoga is that state of mind in which all the vrittis of mind are completely restrained. Now again, vritti we should know, I shall try to explain. Or yoga is the process of these vrittis. Now what is vritti? Once you understand vritti, the whole purpose of yoga becomes so obvious. In simple, plain English, let us say, emotions and feelings, both conflicting emotions and feelings, and also pleasant emotions and feelings, attitudes and aptitudes, or reactions, mental reactions to experiences from outside and also from our own mind, all can be clubbed together under this category, vritti. So vritti is translated sometimes as waves in English. Maybe Swami Vivekananda translates as waves. There's a great meaning in that, You throw a stone into a pond and the stone hits the surface of the pond. It makes a splash. and it will remain there for some time. The stone doesn't hit the water without an impact. The impact will spread beyond the immediate point on which the stone touches the water. Like that, whatever we experience, whatever we do, whatever we speak or think by way of reacting to situations and circumstances, all will have an effect. And this effect is not only the effect that is immediately experienced. There is also an effect that is invisible, unseen, and not experienced at the point of its happening. Suppose you give, let's say you help a person. The immediate visible effect is that person gets your help. Pay $100 to help a person, $1,000 to help a person. The immediate effect that is there for everyone to see is that he'll receive it. But you go back to your home after doing a noble deed, an act of charity, maybe helping a blind man to cross the street, or writing a check to help people suffering from natural earthquakes somewhere in some other continents. And that night I have done a wonderful thing. Nobody will know that you have helped this person. You have drawn this check to help somebody. Or you have helped a person, blind man, to cross the street. But you will know in your mind it will have an effect. The effect could be that you may go to sleep more peacefully. That's because you feel the soothing effect on your own mind, a healing effect on your own mind. Now that is a vritti. That is a positive vritti, an example of positive vritti. Now this is the unseen, invisible, but very intense and very strongly felt experience. It's an example of vritti. The opposite example also is equally important. A person does harm to somebody. I'm not talking about hardened criminals. I'm talking about normal human beings. Of course, Vikshiptam Mana is that particular state. It deals with normal human beings. Atha deals with normal human beings. People who happen to do something wrong, which they may not have wanted to do, but they end up doing, apart from the harmful result that's there for everyone to see, the visible result, there is an invisible result. The person who does that harmful thing, he will have a pricking of conscience, whatever it is. It is an example of vritti. In fact, every action, not only physical action, every verbal action, a word you speak or a mental action, a thought you think, an idea that flashes in the mind, all can create vrittis. And these vrittis actually haunt us. Many people suffer because of vrittis. And of course, Vyasa, the great commentator, he has created a whole world of psychology out of this. A psychiatrist will tell you, he will hypnotize you, he will bring you back to your early growing years and then may try to unearth some childhood experiences and then give a medicine. But that medicine doesn't explain things, of course. The medicine only helps you to postpone your problem, and the problem will tell you, I'll come back again, I'll be back. That's what the problem is going to tell you when you take medicine. But here, Vyasa explains, these vrittis create samskaras. And what is samskara? Samskara is a tendency that is prone to action. A vritti, a set of vrittis, which are the result of repeated actions, can become solidified can become a concrete samskara. As samskara, it translated into impression, tendencies, attitudes, etc. But it is something that we are born with. You cannot get up out of your own samskaras. Samskaras are part of our real nature. And many of the samskaras may not be conducive to spiritual life. Many of these samskaras may create irritations, feelings, agony, mental agony. And many of these samskaras are responsible for certain problems of obsession and certain problems of delusions of reference, delusions of persecution. And many, mostly, in the manic depressive psychosis, many of the what they used to call in old times, schizophrenic problems, obsessions, you can find samskaras which are not there for us to see, but deep down at the mental level, these samskaras are there. And Vyasa analyzes these samskaras. And the also analysis is possible. But Patanjali's system recommends certain remedies to overturn, to completely change our mental world, to empty the mind of negative samskaras, negative tendencies, and to fill it with positive samskaras. Now, that is called vritti. So, restraining vrittis mean what? Restraining vrittis means it's not that you forcibly control the vrittis. These vrittis or the vrittis can be restrained by manipulating the mental world. Pratipaksha bhavanam, that is a method, that is the remedy given the Yoga Sutra itself. Suppose you have got a nagging memory of unpleasant experiences from previous life. That seems like something that you want to shake off, something you want to get rid of, but cannot. Now, that memory may be unpleasant. Now, you cannot just wish away that memory. It won't go away. But you can counteract the force of that memory by creating a counter force. Pratipaksha bhavana means, suppose, let us say somebody who is suffering from greed, to give an example. Greed, an insatiable thirst for money and wealth and so on. If that person can think of the terrible problems created by greed, the terrible tragedies faced by people because of greed, if they can fill their mind with ideas and stories of persons and events and episodes which teach us the evil of greed, then you are actually creating a counter force that will reduce the intensity of greed. So then what happens in a vritti, a mental tendency or impression which makes you greedy more and more, is restrained by a counter force. So we have to remember the approach in Patanjali system is extremely psychological and extremely spiritual. It is very rational. It doesn't tell you anything about occult power. That's even Vibhudipada, which deals with certain powers generated by yoga practices. If you read it, you will understand it is not something occult. It is very rationally explained and exposed. Just if a martial artist practices for years and makes his hands strong, his physical hands may be different from the hands of a normal person. So also somebody who practices yoga his mind becomes different. His mind develops certain faculties and skills, and it can be explained as scientifically, as rationally, as the powers of an athlete who can run faster than ordinary human beings, who can jump faster than ordinary human beings. So there is a very rational, scientific and totally non-occult explanation to the consequences of yoga in the Vibhudipada. That's what we are going to discuss in the coming sessions. So what happens? Yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is nothing but overhauling, purifying, restraining, and eventually transcending vrittis. And what is chitta? Chitta sabdena antakaranam buddhim ubalakshati iti vajaspadi tattva vaisharathi. So you have to please remember something very interesting. Yoga Sutra literature is so vast, much more profound than anything that you can read by way of modern simple English translations. Yoga Sutra literature, the traditional Yoga Sutra literature is very vast. One is called Tattva Vaisharathi. So Tattva Vaisharathi is one of the, written by Vajaspati. Vajaspati was a great Vedantin who wrote Bhamadi Tika and Shankaracharya's Brahma Sutras, who lived sometime in the 9th century AD. Just maybe 80-90 years after Shankaracharya. So he wrote a well-known book called Tattva Vaisharathi. So there Vajaspati writes, Chitta sabdena antakaranam buddhi ubalakshati. Iti Vajaspati. You know why I am quoting the ancient scriptures? And there is a very important reason. When it comes to science and technology, the latest book is more authentic. When it comes to yoga and philosophy, the earlier the better. That's a very important reason we should remember this criterion. When it comes to the interpretative books on yoga, the earliest book will be the best. The earlier, the better. Because these great teachers who come in the long succession, the line of succession of yoga teachers, they expounded this yoga in such a scientific, rational language. And their understanding of the human mind was so profound. Of course, I agree with you, if you want to learn technology, information technology, or artificial intelligence, or physics, or chemistry, the latest books may be the most authentic. When it comes to yoga, the earlier classical works of the great sages who practice yoga, their books are, the earlier the better, much more authentic. So that's why, so Tattva Vaisharathi says, Chitta sabdena antakaranam buddhim ubalakshati means, by the word chittam, it's not just mind that is meant. Often translation, in modern translation would say mind. No. Mind is only one of the 4 compartments of a mental mechanism. It's called internal organs or antakarana in Sanskrit. And this antakarana, this mental mechanism, has got 4 compartments, of which mind is just one of the 4. Mind functions as a speculative faculty of this mental system. Buddhi is the deciderative faculty. When you decide something, that is intellect or buddhi. Mind always, well, this way or that way. This is right or that is right. There is always sankalpa and vikalpa. Mind thinks this way and immediately it thinks differently. Buddhi means intellect. It decides this is the right thing to do. And chittam means the repository of memories and impressions. Storehouse. The platform, the storehouse in which all these memories are stored. Aham is the 4th one. It means the identification I am. To give an example, suppose you are seeing in front of you in semi-darkness a picture or image, and you mistook that picture, you mistook that image to be a human being, and when you come close to it, you understand it is just a statue. So before you decided, before you really found out it is a statue, your mind was wavering whether it was a human being or something else. When you come very close to it, you understand it is a statue. When you remember, I have seen this statue last week or yesterday, it is a memory that is functioning. And when you identify yourself as the one who saw the same statue yesterday, your aham, the ego system is functioning. So according to the great commentator Tattwai of Vachaspati, who wrote Tattwavaisharadi, this chitta means the entire mental world, mental mechanism. That means yoga is nothing but restraining, overhauling, purifying and transcending the vrittis, emotions and feelings which are accumulated in our mental world as a whole. That is the meaning of chitta. Now we will come to the third sutra, Tada Drashtu Surupe Avasthanam. That is the third sutra. And when you reach this level of transcending vrittis, then what happens? At that time, you identify yourself as a seer. You can see things happening in your own mind without identifying. You may be getting angry, but you can identify your anger. See, if the person is well, I am becoming somewhat angry. You can be aware of your own anger when you simultaneously remember that there is no point with your anger. When you identify yourself with your anger, then you don't see anything wrong in being angry. When you are able to watch your own anger, you are able to objectify your frustration or anger or emotions, become the object and you become the subject. You become the seer. And drashta means seer. Tada drashtu surupe avasthana means at that time when you are able to achieve the goal of yoga, that is transcending vrittis, when the mind is free from all conflicting thought currents, when the mind is fully established in its own true nature, watch ourselves. When we are able to watch something, we are not identifying with what we are seeing. See, you can enjoy a drama not when you are playing, when you are an actor in the drama. You can enjoy a drama only when you are sitting in the gallery and you are sitting on a chair. You are not participating. When you are not participating, you are not sharing in the emotions and feelings. You are not having yourself any emotion. You are watching your own emotion. If you can watch your own emotion, you will be free from your emotion. If you are watching the drama on the stage, you are not on the stage. You are detaching yourself from what is going on the stage. So that happens. Then what happens? Drashtuhu surupe avasthanam. At that time, when we are able to free ourselves from these vrittis, what happens? We are able to remain completely free from all these vrittis. So remember, there are two words, drashta and drishyam. Drishyam means the object, what we see, the drama going on the stage. And drashta means the observer, the witness, the one who sees, the seer. All the problems according to Yoga Sutra occur because we identify ourselves with whatever is going on outside and whatever is going on inside. We identify ourselves with anger. So we identify ourselves with frustration. But suppose we witness for frustration, then you are actually de-identifying yourself with frustration. So you are actually drawing a line of demarcation between drashta and drishyam, the seer and the seen, the subject and object. And that's the purpose, the goal of yoga. So we'll conclude today, the first day, and you are most welcome to put questions. Most welcome. Any question on the subjects?
Hari Om Swamiji.
Hari Om, Hari Om.
I have two questions. My first question is basically an observation. So the first sutra is Atha Yoga Anushasana, right?
Remember, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. That's
Yoga Anushasana.
Yeah.
So this also sounds a lot like Atato Brahma Jigyasa.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand, is this a common thread across different sutras?
Yeah.
To say, now
Yeah.
we start understanding the sutra.
Yeah. Atha is used in different implications, different meanings. One meaning is, it is called a Mangala Charanam. It means, Atha is considered to be an auspicious beginning of anything. So Brahma Sutra begins, Athado Brahma Jignasa. Atha, Ato Brahma Jignasa. Atha, Ataha Brahma Jignasa. Means Athado Brahma Jignasa. And Mimamsa Sutra begins Athado Dharma Jignasa. And there are Atham Vyakhyasama. So you find now we are going to discuss, So Atha could mean, is a kind of Mangala Vachaka, means an auspicious way of beginning anything. Another meaning is, after having completed, after having reached fitness, if you are going to begin, you are going to sit the fifth class, fifth grade, then you should have passed the fourth grade. Then you can go to the fifth grade as a child studying in a school. So fitness is called adhikari or adhikara. Adhikara means fitness. By way of previous qualification, you are qualified enough to begin this new session. That is also one of the adhikarartha, means the meaning of fitness. Other meaning is mangalartha, means something auspicious. Of course, here in the yoga context, the commentators have given very, very scientific interpretations. Yoga Sutra is a little more rigid because it is a closed lineage, unlike Brahma Sutras, Vedanta and other Nyaya Sutras and other Mimamsa Sutras, they have got different interpretations from different angles. But Yoga Sutra is like a straight road. So the interpretation is simple. After you have become qualified to enter this new path of inquiry, that's the meaning of Atha here.
Then Swamiji, as a follow-up, what is the adhikara or qualification that we have earned so as to learn this from you?
Actually, you are sitting right there listening to this class. What does it mean? It means you have a great interest in these spiritual ideas related to yoga. That's why you are sitting there. So because you have become spiritually, mentally qualified. That's why if you say Athado Brahma Jignasa, Atha according to Purva Mimamsa means you have studied Purva Mimamsa, then you can study Uttara Mimamsa. According to Vedanta, Shankaracharya, Atha means after sadhana chatushtaya sampatti. That's the meaning in Vedantic tradition. So, atha here means when you reach a point where we are looking for something higher, something that we should aspire for. That is the real adhikaritvam in Sanskrit, means fitness. So, you will understand this according to Puramimamsakas, according to Jnana Karma Samuchayavadins, athado Brahma Jignasa, means athadar means you have finished all the Puramimamsas, all the karmas, all karmaganda. Now you can begin inquiry into Brahman, Jnana Kanda. You got it. But according to Vedanta, what it means, you have already acquired this state of renunciation, Nityanitya Vastu Viveka, Ihamutra Bharabhoga Viraga, Samadhi Sakar Sampati, Mumukshutum, all these spiritual qualifications of mental restraint, renunciation, a strong desire for liberation. When you have attained all these qualifications, you are ready for Brahma Jignasa. That is the meaning of Atha according to Advaitins. So here it means, okay, come on.
Yeah. Swami, the next question was, so the third sutra, you said that once a level of transcending the vrittis is attained, then you begin to non-identify and you see, you identify yourself as a seer. You see everything objectively. Now, here when you were talking about the emotions, you were talking about the negative emotions, like say anger, for instance. What about the positive emotions, like compassion? Do we non-identify from that as well?
Yeah, I would make one suggestion. Right now we have started the class today. So as the classes progress, you find many of the questions that we may be asking today get automatically answered.
Okay.
See, that's an important point, because when we begin this new session, it's possible at the beginning we may have all these doubts. But slowly you find as we progress, many of these become automatically answered. In one context, Patanjali says, it's a very striking language. He says, all these spiritual disciplines, including yoga, are just like removing obstacles. That gives the example, or suppose you have you want to irrigate the field and there is a river or a pond nearby, and you want to cut a canal from the nearby river and connect that canal with the field which you want to irrigate. Okay? Now what do? You cut a canal. So what you are actually doing is you remove all the soil. That part of the soil is removed, it becomes a canal and water flows. So, if you are a sculptor, if you want to make an image of Buddha, you have got a granite stone block in front of you. What do? You chisel out all unnecessary parts of the granite. And what you get as a result? You get this Buddha's image. So like that, all spiritual practices are nothing but removing the obstacles that stand in the way of our discovering, our self-discovering our own true nature. That is why Surupe Avasthanam, Tada Drashtu Surupe. Drashtu is a Shashti Vibhakti of Drashta. Means then you get fully established in the true position of the seer, of the witness of one's own self. What is our true self? That is the Buddha. So what you do? What you did? You removed all unnecessary parts of the granite stone, and the result is you have got a Buddha image in front of you. That's right.
Okay. Thanks, Swami.
Yeah, thank you.
One question I have, Acharya Bhavin. Namaskaram, thanks for opening this series. It's wonderful, actually.
Yeah.
My question is about, I was just trying to study this Yoga Sutras for a long time, actually.
Yeah.
And I come across 17 commentaries on Yoga Sutras.
Excuse me, can you, if you don't mind, can you make yourself visible?
Yes, 1 second. I'm trying to do it, 1 second.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Now I think I'm visible, right?
Yeah.
Namaskar.
Yeah, namaskar.
Okay, there are 17 commentaries or something on Yoga Sutras. And Vyasa is one and Vachaspati Mishra is something like that, the second or something like that. Could you please give a little bit of an introduction of why so many? I understand Bhagavad Gita has 47 commentaries, but if you study Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhva, and maybe Abhinav Gupta, a couple of people, so four of them, you really get the main trends of different, and the later acharyas are a combination of here and there, and you can get the trend of it. But in the Yoga Sutras, what is the tributary, what is the main tributary, what is the sub-tributary, and what do you want to get? If you have 2 or 3 different viewpoints, how do you get the top 3 or top 4 right in the beginning? Namaskar.
Namaskar. Now you mentioned is Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhva, in Vedanta tradition, different distinct, in fact, mutually distinct, conflicting schools of Vedanta emerged because they all wrote bhashyas on Brahma Sutras. Shankara is the only one who wrote bhashyas on Brahma Sutras, the Upanishads, and all the Upanishads, Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita, plus Prakarana, Stotras, and so on. Now, in the yoga tradition, you don't have this kind of different streams of thought currents, which are different from each other. So the most authentic commentary and the oldest one is Vyasa's Patanjali Sutra Bhashyam. The next one is Shankaracharya's Bhashya Vivarana. That is a sub-commentary explaining Vyasa Bhashyam, but Shankaracharya gives his own views, certain unique flashes of insight you find in Shankaracharya's commentary. Then we have Tattva Vaisharati, third one, that is Vachaspati Mishra in the 9th century AD. Then we have got Bhoja Raja, called Raja Martanda. He's a very famous one. He was himself a king. He was a great emperor, Bhoja Raja. He wrote Raja Martanda. Then we have got Vijnana Bhikshu. According to some scholars, he was a Buddhist. It's called Yoga Bhashya Vartikam. It is a Vartika he wrote on Vyasa Bhashyam, on Yoga Sutras. So, and of course, there are certain commentaries written by the Vijnanavada schools of Buddhism. And in fact, they have got another name called Yogachara system. They got that name Yogachara system because they were great practitioners of Yogachara philosophy. It's a kind of subjective idealism which did not believe in the reality of external world or external things. Total negation is kind of subjective idealism. I mean, things exist only so long as they are perceived in your mind. Of course, those volumes are not so closely studied, but they are very important. So, Vijnana Bhikshu Yoga Bhashya Vartikam, Ramananda Saraswati has written Yoga Maniprabha. The Ramananda Saraswati lived much later, and Yoga Sudhagaram Sadasiva Brahmendra Saraswati. That is Yoga Sudhagaram, and Bhava Ganesha Dekshita. He wrote Pradipika Tika. And then you went Hariharananda Aranya, he wrote in the later decades of 19th century. But they more or less followed the tradition of Vyasa Bhashya. So in reality, except these 8 important commentaries which constitute the solid foundation of Yoga Sutra Bhashya literature, I do not think there was any other interpretation which as a distinct identity in one way or other being different from Vyasa's main interpretations. In English language, for the first time, Yoga Sutras were interpreted in very plain, simple English by Swami Vivekananda. So Swami Vivekananda consulted, we know very well from Swami Vivekananda's other writings and references that he must have consulted Vyasa's commentary, Raja Martanda, and of course Tattva Vaisharati and so on. The Swamiji's interpretation contains a lot of flashes which are taken from different interpretative works. So you don't have different schools of yoga philosophy. Yoga philosophy itself is, technically, yoga philosophy is nothing but Sankhya philosophy. Yoga is nothing but some kind of a spiritual discipline based on Sankhya system. They are almost identical, they believe in these two fundamental categories, Prakriti and Purusha, and they believe that the whole universe evolves out of Prakriti, the Mahatattva, Ahankara, and so on. All these are common in yoga system and also in the Sankhya system. So the philosophical basis of yoga is Sankhya only. It cannot claim any independent status as a distinct philosophical system. We don't have a book in the yoga tradition comparable to Sankhya Karika of Ishvara Krishna, and nothing we don't have. It's all philosophically, it is just an extension of Sankhya.
Except that this is a Seshwara Sankhya, not the Nirishwara Sankhya.
Yeah, this is Sweshwara Sankhya. Yeah. Nirishwara Sankhya is not very, it doesn't have any scriptural foundation because, Kabila Sutras are not yet found, not discovered. We all depend upon Ishvara Krishna Sankhya Karika as the only and the earliest available scriptural basis. Kabila Sutras are not, at least not in full form, not yet available, not even manuscript form.
Thank you, Namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, please.
Namaskaram, Swami.
Namaskaram.
So my question is, what should we expect to learn from Patanjali Yoga Sutras that will directly impact the way we connect our life starting Monday, tomorrow morning?
Oh, really, when we face the most distinct contribution is, when we face conflict, I mentioned this earlier, conflict between mind and intellect. Conflict, people face this conflict. They want to do certain things. They have a strong, sincere desire to do certain things or not to do certain things. So once we understand the forces of emotions and feelings, the mystery, the mysterious functions of emotions and feelings, which actually create mental block. Mental blocks can be properly understood in the light of Patanjali's analysis. See, at psychological level, when you understand the problem, there is a lot of chance. There's every chance that you may get out of that problem. Once you understand, this is the reason why I feel this way, this negativity or anything, But this is how mind normally functions. Then you won't be shocked or surprised at the way your own mind functions. Then you will be able to manage your mind. So when we are not at all aware of the mysterious ways of the mind, and then we confront the problem at the mental level, then it becomes a serious problem. It's just like when suppose you're driving from San Francisco to Sacramento, and your iPhone tells you there's a possibility of traffic delay 10 miles ahead. Then if you reach that point where traffic problem begins, you won't be shocked. You'll be ready for it. But suppose you don't know it's going to happen, then when you reach there, you'll be concerned, you'll be worrying, you'll be complaining how long this is going to last. But suppose you know already that it's going to last 15 minutes, you'll be ready for it. Like that, when you get a deeper and deeper understanding of the way your mind functions, then you'll be able to manage your mind. In psychiatric treatment, you know what you do? The medicine you take will make it impossible for you to confront the problem, because the problem is just obscured from your experience. But here, the problem doesn't disappear. You are ready for the problem. And when you are ready for a problem, then problem is lesser problem. When you are ready to face a problem, that problem is a lesser problem. When you are not ready for it, it's a bigger problem. So Patanjali, that is the great contribution of Patanjali. Remember, that's why you find a lot of wonderful ideas in the remember, not in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. That's the main problem today is we don't have a proper totally intelligible interpretation of the traditional commentaries. If you don't mind my telling you bluntly, we do not have a platform for interpreting the traditional Sanskrit commentaries in plain modern English. Because when you translate literally, it becomes unintelligible.
Yes.
And when you make a freelance translation without really understanding the Sanskrit, then you do great injustice to the original scriptures. That's why Patanjali's system, based on these commentaries, they constitute a unique source material for understanding human mind and the human problems we are facing in today's world.
This was super insightful, Swamiji. Thank you.
Yeah.
But what would be a suggested text that you want us to read that will have this kind of intelligent commentary?
I would say, because the translations, frequently translations are useful to you only if you learn thoroughly from a teacher. And if you learn thoroughly from a teacher, translations are not necessary for you. They are not useful unless you learn from a teacher the original scripture. And if you learn from a teacher the original scripture, the translations are not necessary. So, but I can always suggest to you Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga. The uniqueness of that book is Swamiji himself had experience, many of the experiences that Patanjali talks about. So you find that unique touch of somebody who had this experience, who had practiced many of these things, that you find in Swami Vivekananda's translation. I'm talking about the books available in modern times. So Swamiji wrote more than a century ago, but that book still remains the best that's available for the English reading public. Yeah.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you. So we'll conclude today. So happy to meet all of you. So we'll continue next week. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Thank you so much.
The recording has stopped.